Hey everybody, welcome to Hey Sawbones, My Story, My Passion. You are not going to want to miss today's episode. We have an amazing individual, Travis Bazell. He's an entrepreneur. He's a business owner here in Erie, Pennsylvania. He's a very close friend of mine, probably one of my best friends. And this is going to be an exciting, pretty much take the training wheels off and put your kids to bed too, because this is definitely not um, your typical PG version, but we're going to keep it as clean as possible, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So stay tuned. Sawbones is coming your way. Have a great day. See you soon.
All nurses to the nurses station.
Lawless country people are real close family. Lately, some of my kinfolk don't get around too good, you see. When that doctor asked them, son, how'd you get in this condition? They says, hey, Sawbones, I'm just carrying on an old family tradition. They wanna know, Doc, why do you think I got this pain in my joints from years of playing hard in this life that's too short? When that doctor asked me, son, how'd you get in this condition? I says, hey, Sawbones, I'm just carrying on an old family tradition. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me all about it, Doc.
Ready to ask the question. Might not be able to air this one.
Welcome to Hey Sawbones, My Story and My Passion. I'm Dr. Ryan Molly, orthopedic surgeon, entrepreneur, business owner. I'm the cutter of bones. Most importantly, though, loving husband and father of 3 young boys that keep me, I think, getting older every day, but loving life. So this is really the story, kind of behind the scenes, the bare bones version of what makes me tick, both professionally and both personally. And we bring a guest on each week, and this week I'm super excited for this guest. He's not only a very, very close friend, but a business colleague of mine, Mr. Travis Bazell. He is a wonderful individual. He owns Orthopedic Solutions. It's a DME, durable medical equipment company here in Erie, Pennsylvania. We met probably back in 2015, 2016, something like that. But he went to Gannon University. He played baseball there. He was there from 2006 until 2010. He graduated with his Bachelor in Science in, what was your Bachelor in Science in?
Biology.
Biology, yeah. So without further ado, Travis Bazell. So thanks for joining me, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
I feel like we've done this once or twice in a different setting, but
Yeah, but we're going to keep this fun. Keep
That's
it
good, yeah.
lighthearted. Ground rules, okay? There really aren't any ground rules. Okay. When we do get to the question and answer session, you do
Okay.
have the ability to kind of veto one question I ask you if you want to,
okay.
right?
Okay.
But if you feel confident, you can answer it. So let's get down to this. So, Travis, the way I like to start all these off is just a brief intro about who you are, kind of where you grew up, your story, what brought you up to this point.
Sure. So, Travis Bazell, co-owner of Orthopedic Solutions, born in Erie, Pennsylvania. So, born and raised here. Went to high school here. Went to Collegiate Academy. Graduated in 2006. As Dr. Molly mentioned, I'm a baseball guy. I went to Gannon, got my bachelor's degree in biology. And, my plan the whole time was to go to pharmacy school. That was the mission. So all through high school, I worked at the Giant Eagle Pharmacy on think it was the Summit Town Plaza. I think it's now changed.
Were you a
location.
pharmacy tech?
I was a pharmacy tech.
I was too. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I was
So you got sick of going 5, 10, 15, 20, and you said I can do more?
exactly.
Okay.
But my thought process was no digs out there. I got some friends who are pharmacists, but no, really it was kind of like, that was my journey. And it was like, Gannon had the 2+3 program that I had fumbled my way out of because I liked to have a little bit too much fun in college with my roommates.
Not you.
I know, right? So I got to this place where I had just pot committed to finish my bachelor's degree, and I was going to do the post-bac program at LECOM. And during that process, a really good friend of mine, we had traveled to State College to take the PCAT, which is something that I don't even know is required anymore. But think of MCAT, but for pharmacy. And it just did not go well. And I knew at that time, and really it was more just me not taking it seriously and not preparing, that I knew that I was going to have to, wasn't for me, right? I didn't take it seriously. It wasn't something that I was really passionate about. And so I was fortunate enough to get a phone call. So, I mean, I'm not kidding. Months before I graduated from Gannon, from a good friend of mine, Kyle Altier, who was just a guy that I knew from school. And so we had kind of run in similar circles, and he's like, hey, do you want to get into med device? And I'm like, what? Like, I had looked at pharma sales, and, just things that I kind of had always felt like I had more of kind of that gift of gab, and that was probably going to be more suited for me than being in the back of a pharmacy.
So people that know Travis Bazell know exactly what he is talking about with that gift of gab.
All I do is talk. So I'm like, yeah. And honestly, and you know this, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and like in that world of, med device sales and things like that, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I had no clue. It wasn't something that was on my radar. It was something that kind of like, it's like all good things, right? It's like how they happen. And it kind of hit me. And we had a mutual friend, Derek Giancola, who I've become very close with, and he was kind of helped me through this process. He was a product manager at the time with the company that eventually I went to go work for. And so where I met my mentor, Russ. So Russ is kind of a big figure in my life at that time. And although he's not with us anymore, still to this day. So I get this interview, and they're like, hey, you're going to go to Southern California, Irvine. I'm like, never even been out of Pennsylvania. So it's just such a like.
Did you have to get a passport for that? Or
funny. This is actually hilarious. So the company it's a DME company, so durable medical equipment, but mostly focused on spine. So spinal bracing, cervical collars, like those sort of things. And so they sent me a collar, and they said, hey, like, do some research. Like, we want a sales pitch. And I was like kind of nervous. I'm like, I don't know anything about like C-spine protocols, cervical collars, no clue. And so I go, my first flight ever. And I was not like a very traveled person in my life to this point, right? I'm like a broke college student trying to make it and not burden my parents. So I get to this point where I'm Erie to Philly. I get to Philly, and I'm going to long leg Philly to Orange County, John Wayne, right?
Wow.
It's a flight.
for your first flight, that's a big, long flight.
In Philly, sorry, my Philly people, worst airport of all time.
Yeah, if you want to miss a flight or have something bad happen, just fly through Philly or to Philly.
The worst. So I get there, and I'm messing with the collar. So if any of you have ever seen a cervical collar before, I mean, you can get a general idea of what it is. But, the Vista collar, it's like huge. It's like if you've ever been to a level 1 trauma center and have had someone or have been walking around and see someone in a collar, there's a 90% chance this is the collar.
Is this the hard collar? This
Yes.
isn't like the soft collar
Exactly.
with the Velcro on the back.
So I'm sitting there, and I put this collar on, and they're getting ready to board the flight and this flight attendant or stewardess, I don't know, they come over and they pick up my bag, and they're like, oh, sir, you can board first. And they upgrade my flight. So they upgrade my seat, like all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know how to explain to them that I have this collar on. I'm not actually injured. I'm trying to just demo this and feel this out. But now I'm so far into this. I feel like George Costanza at this point,
Yeah.
like running with his like.
Did they upgrade you to like first class or anything like that?
I don't remember like
Let you board the plane?
specifics. I got in the plane first. I think I did get like a roomier seat. They brought me. Yeah, it was like a whole thing. But I felt like, remember that episode from Seinfeld?
Oh, yeah.
Where like he's carrying like his electric scooter and he's running down the street. I'm like, I don't know at what point the charade ends, right? Because I feel horrible.
No,
but-
you're committed and you kind of go till the very end.
So this is like, oh, it's got to be 6 hours. I don't know. It was the longest flight of all time. And I'm sitting there in this thing like, I can't fall asleep. I can't do anything. My mouth is dry. I'm nervous.
You kept it on the whole flight.
The whole flight. The whole flight. So I finally land and, you know, they help me off. They get my bag. I'm like, I'm like scoping the people around me. How long do I have to wait?
But it's more like Batman though, because you're turning your whole body,
Finally,
right?
I finally like get to like the Uber stand and I like take this thing off and I'm like, and I'm like, I just feel like my head just falls into my body because I've been wearing this thing forever. So
Were they like trying to like spoon feed you or anything like that on the plane?
no, thankfully not. But I will tell you this. I told that story at my interview, Killed, and they said they'd call me and let me know. Within 3 hours, I got a phone call and got the job offer. So they were like, they were totally in on it. Was so funny. But so yeah, I mean, there's a lot more that goes into that. And it's not, you know, just quite as like, you know, linear as I just described it. But
you went to Chattanooga, right?
yeah. So I went to Chattanooga. And so prior to that, when that interview process, I'd met, so Russ Pierce was his name, and he's just, I mean, powerful guy, right? Like just the way, just he's contagious, right? His like energy, his enthusiasm, like I think a lot of things that you and I share, right? And a lot of the people around us, like it was just his sense of urgency and like his vision and his passion to just want more and do better and go big and just go and build and build and build. And he just like, he really believed in me and like, he really saw something in me. And so not to say that, you know, I think you grow up and, you know, but I mean, outside of like my parents, right? Like my mom, my dad, you know, always really supporting me and, you know, giving me that confidence to like, you know, go talk that talk, walk that walk and do that. You know, it's not as easy as it looks, right? So like there is some natural charisma and just the ability to flow a little bit, but it's
sure.
not just like, you know, there's a sense of purpose to it, right? So it's like there's people who believe in you, there's people that rely on you, there's all these different factors that like I didn't learn until much later in my life, but like as I'm going through the motions initially, like this is like where Russ comes in and he's like, you know, it's like my dad, my mom, they kind of got me to this point.
Yeah.
Graduated school, went and did my thing, you know, took my lumps, farm school didn't work out, didn't do too great on a test. You know, it's like all this stuff. And it's like, maybe this isn't your path. Maybe you can, but it's going to take longer.
Yeah.
To, you know.
That's life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you get thrown curveballs, but it sounds like a great curveball that you were thrown, and
it's
your baseball background helped you to be able to hit it. And you've talked to me many, many times about Russ and like the importance, the role that he played in your life. So you were in Chattanooga. I know that you moved to the Metro Detroit area for a while, but
Yeah.
what eventually brought you back to Erie, Pennsylvania? And
Yeah.
when was that?
So family, right? So this is kind of a crazy story. So my wife, now Lindsay, at the time, her very, very good friend, her teacher friend. So my wife's a first grade teacher, and Allison and Steven are very good friends of ours. And at the time, I'm living in Atlanta, getting ready to move to Detroit. Okay. And I'm coming home for the holidays. And, you know, it was just kind of one of those, hey, do you have any friends kind of thing. And so Lindsay and I had met, and so I was home for the holidays and we went on a few dates and kind of got to know each other. And then I was gone again. And so, but during that time, we like really kept in touch. I mean, it was like our relationship. I mean, we knew everything about each other. And I mean, we were thousands of miles apart.
In time frame, when is this?
So this is like 2011, 2012 ish is kind of when this whole thing kind of starts. And I mean, it's just like, you know, you really get to know somebody and it wasn't like forced either. Like just talking all the time, always kind of connecting. What are you doing? Like all that sort of stuff. And then like moving to Metro Detroit made Erie, which is, you know, where we are now and where our families are and where she lived at the time, super easy because it's 4 hours, right? So, and we're in the beginning stages of dating. Like, you know, we're not having kids or getting married or like none of that's happened at this time. So it's like, okay, this is manageable. We really care about each other. Like we really know kind of where we're going. And so it was just a no-brainer. Well, in 1 year, so in that 2012, 2013 window, I had the opportunity to move to Cleveland. So one of my best friends, Adam, who you've met, lives in Cleveland, and it's like an absolute no-brainer. It's like, you got to do this. So I moved to Cleveland. Now I'm only an hour and a half, and I'm
Just
with.
kind of kept inching your way back to Erie.
And
It's
that's-
like a magnet that was pulling you.
It's so funny because everyone says that. And it's like, my eventual plan was like, I loved all the places I lived in, like that big city and the hustle bustle and like that whole thing. But now that I'm home, I wouldn't have done it differently. Like, I'm fortunate and thankful that it ended up the way that it did. But, initially Lindsay's plan was to come to Cleveland. And so she had a job interview, got a job at a great school in Cleveland, and like we're pot committed to Cleveland. We're close enough to the families, we can make this work.
Sure.
And so at the time, anyone that's familiar with like Erie, Pennsylvania, like there's a big like teacher short, like big huge thing contract. She gets laid off in Erie, and the Cleveland thing made a ton of sense, right? Well, like a couple weeks before she's going to make her decision to come to Cleveland and she and I are going to create this life together, she gets called back to her old job. And so it was a challenge because it was like, okay, like what's our long term, right? We haven't had that conversation yet, but we knew that this decision was definitely going to impact it, right? So
Right.
I knew that, and I knew too that I wanted to be close to family, right? Like my parents are not getting any younger. I've got 2 kid sisters that I have a really good relationship with. At the time, Lindsay's brother, who I became very good friends with, was in town. Her parents, her grandparents, my grandmother had been ill and, had come, back to live with my parents. So there's like all of these things. And it was like, you know what? I made the decision so that she didn't have to. And I was like, take the job in Erie. We've done it for how many years now? Another couple of years is not going to kill us. And I'm going to posture and position myself to create this territory to where Erie makes sense.
And then there had to be an introduction with Tony Fatika, right?
Yeah, this story is even crazier. So my partner now, Orthopedic Solutions, the company that he and I own together, I'm in Cleveland, right? So that transition happens and I'm getting ready to make the move back to Erie. I convinced this company that I'm with that Erie, Pennsylvania is the perfect center location for a territory, which, by the way, folks, it's not. So it's not. Like, it's just so, right? I mean, I got to try. There's the hub that I had from like a sales perspective. You got to think I'm going to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus, upstate New York. Like, that makes no sense. You would want to pick the area where if you're going to be home, you can go do a bunch of stuff, right? I mean, Erie, it didn't make sense, but sales guy and sold them on that. So I go back home. I get a phone call. My mom has a stroke a few years earlier, and she was totally fine. She's good. And she was having these hemifacial spasms. And Ray Sakula is a neurosurgeon at the time at UPMC. I'm very friendly with him. Great guy, wonderful doctor, wonderful surgeon, just really, really good guy. And he's doing a follow-up after he does this special procedure on my mom. And I get this phone call. He's like, hey, Trav. I'm like, yeah. Dad, everything okay? Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm here with Dr. Sakula. I'm like, okay. He's like, he needs his brace. I told him you're the Aspen guy. And he kind of laughed and said, no, seriously, he's the rep for Aspen. You have exactly what he needs. And I'm like, get out of here. And he's like, no. So he calls me and he's like, hey, you need to meet this Tony Fatika guy. There's this company here that he works for and he needs this brace. I need this special brace. You got it. You need to get it to him. Get it figured out. Sends me Tony's number. I call Tony. Within 20 minutes. Hey, Dr. Sakula's called me. Here's who I am. Oh, I kind of know who you are. So his son and I had a couple funny run-ins with various girls that we may or may not have dated the same people. And so, but love his son, Anthony. But it was just funny how we kind of knew each other. And so I meet Tony and we're talking on the phone and he's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, get me it overnighted. We'll expedite it, get the patient taken care of. And that's me and Tony, right? Sense of urgency, get it done, take care
So
of
you
it.
guys clicked.
We clicked instantly. And he goes, hey, we actually have a dinner tonight with all of the ortho neurosurgeons for UPMC Hammett. Can you make it? I'm like, well, I'm in Cleveland right now. What time's the dinner? He's like, in an hour and a half. I'm like, well, I'm about an hour and a half away. Let me throw on a suit. Literally left Cleveland, jetted right there, went to the Bayfront Sheraton, met Tony, go through this whole thing, and we end up like converting like all of whatever other manufacturers they were using on the spine side to Aspen, the company that I represented at the time. And it was like the rest was history. Like Tony and I went from there, developed this relationship for years and years and years, and it just built, and we got to know each other like on a business sense, on a personal sense, our families.
So what year was that when you officially moved back?
So when
to
I officially
Erie?
moved back, so I'm trying to think. I think it was like 2014.
Okay.
Because my wife and I, so Lindsay and I got married in 2015. So August 1st of 2015. And so we had moved into our home in June of 2015, and then 2 months later got married. So it was like as we say, actually, I got that from Russ, squeezed 10 pounds into a 5-pound jar. That was like that.
We usually use other words for that. But
Yeah, exactly.
we won't use that for this podcast.
Stuff.
So I guess that leads me to my last question before we kind of move on to the next segment.
Sure.
But, this is about the time that I'm moving back to Pennsylvania. I was in Metro Detroit for pretty much a decade. I did my residency there. Moved to Columbus for a year, did a fellowship, then was back in practice in Metro Detroit for 4.5, almost 5 years.
Yeah.
Made the trek back to Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And do you remember the first time we met?
I do. So 2017 actually was the timeline. And so at the beginning of 2017, so Tony.
But I was back in 15. You were back in 15, but we didn't meet until 17?
Correct.
Okay.
So Tony had got a jump start. So Tony starts Orthopedic Solutions, right? And there's a various, arrangement that is set up. But, Tony starts Orthopedic Solutions. He brings on his son, Nick, who is running with them. And Nick is involved in Orthopedic Solutions. And so Tony and Nick and Lori, his wife, is doing all the billing and, all the, admin stuff. And so, Orthopedic Solutions is now kind of becoming more robust and starting to grow. And where Tony and Nick, it's like, okay, we need help. And Tony has always been like, we need to do something together. We need to collaborate. We need to do this. We need to do this. And so finally, like end of 2017, he's like, hey, there's a lot of people looking, to have this conversation and do this kind of stuff, but he'd be the one to tell you. He's like, you're the guy. You're the person that I want to run with and be involved with this. And I really want you to come and do this with us. And so I took that leap of faith and trust Tony and know, the caliber of person that he is and all the people around him and the team, and knew that, I could provide some value and, hopefully, continue to just help the company grow. And so I did. And so we're on and we're kind of talking about, 2018. So January 1 is my first day, but it's like Christmas time.
That day kind of sounds familiar to me as a pretty important day for myself.
And this is where we're going. There is kind of just like a mutual colleague between us and Tony and, you, and he's like, you got to meet this Dr. Molly guy. And so, this is so new. Like Tony and Nick really, like they really helped me in terms of this business model was so different from what I was doing. Manufacturer side. This is, spine only. This is, hips, knees, elbows, wrist splint. It's boots, it's ankles. It's all of these extremity things that were never on my radar. And so we're talking through this thing and you come up with, this mutual colleague, and they're talking and they're like, you need to meet him and talk about DME. And we're like learning about your practice and how busy it is. And I'm like, oh, we got to figure that out, because that's in the beginning of like getting this thing off the ground. It's like, that is like monumental in like creating like a pillar of growth within like the company, right? Like that sort of partnership and developing a relationship with, and I've never even met you. I'm just like envisioning like.
So where was the first, was it Firestones?
Firebirds.
Firebirds, yeah,
so
Firebirds.
It's a couple days before Christmas, right? And so we sit down, you had a buzzed head. I think you were wearing like a 3/4 that you had a hat. I want to say, well, I know it wasn't Ohio State, but I felt it was like something like red, gray, Wisconsin. That sounds weird, but you came in and it's so funny because you just are like totally different like now. Like I don't know what it was, but and we sit down and we're talking about this whole concept of immobilizers versus range of motions, and we're talking about the benefits, and like I could see the twinkle in your eye where you're like, that kind of makes sense. And you're like, there's another company that a vendor that with the group I was with before, it could be turnkey, but you and Tony, I kind of like you guys, and it seems like it's a good fit personality wise. And we're like, okay. And we leave and, have a good Christmas, yada, yada. Tony and I are like, hey, we did the best we could, and, hopefully it works out. And then it's like a couple days after Christmas and you call and he's like, hey, no, Brandy. I think you had Brandy call us.
Probably. I typically tag somebody.
He's a delegator, guys. So she's like, hey, Dr. Molly made his decision. I'm like, all right. He's like, you guys are in. The other guys are out. Awesome. Start January 3rd. I'm like, dude, that's in like a week. She's like, yeah, I know. And Tony and I are scrambling. We're like driving all over the place, like getting walkers and canes. Like, we weren't prepared to be like, you're seeing 50 people on Monday. It was like,
but you made it happen.
Made it happen for sure. But that was the motto, right? It was just like, we figured it out. We made it happen.
What do I always say? Where there's a problem, there's a solution, right?
And
you just like, get on your horse and you ride and you make it happen.
We never say no, right? Like, and I know it's just like, I'm learning in life now there are certain things, but it's like, you never turn down an opportunity, right? Like explore the opportunity.
When opportunity knocks, I mean, you have a couple options, right?
Yeah.
You can open that door,
yeah,
or you can wait for that knock to occur again. And oftentimes that knock's going to not come again or not come for a while. So, and I'm a firm believer in, you make a decision, you move forward with it. I can't stand paralysis by analysis where you go, and if it doesn't work, you pivot. And you change.
It's so funny though. I'm just like reflecting on it now as we're sitting here, but like that time, like, and I'm a newbie to this, a lot of this stuff too. Like the sales game and the dialogue and the sales cycle, and I can do that. But this new concept of service, and not service in terms of building a relationship, but service as in like actually servicing a patient, like fitting, like this more like clinical approach. Like I like without Tony and Nick, like in the beginning of that, like really like, helping with that like transition and like making like that work for, it was a lot. So, but we got through it, and then we continued to grow. But it was just so funny that now like later in life and after all these years.
Yeah. It's been since that initial relationship started, it's over 5 years, 5.5 years,
which is wild
6 years
to
now.
think about.
So, well, hey, we're going to go to the next section, which is kind of the Q&A section.
Okay.
So ground rules there. First of all, we got to do a beverage break.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to be the first to apologize. We were going to do some Buffalo Trace, but I didn't have the correct ice cubes. And I'm a firm believer, if you're going to do something the right way, you got to do it the right way. You can't skip steps. And, I was listening to a podcast the other day. I got to give props to it. It's actually an orthodontist. It's called Orthopreneurs. And one of his podcasts, the title of it was something that I totally believe in. And I'm kind of stealing this motto.
Okay.
It's the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Right? So if you're going to take a shortcut here, it's probably going to bleed over into another part of your life where you're going to take a shortcut there, right? Sure. Like if you're not going to do it the right way, you're probably not going to do it the right way with other aspects of your life. So I think you know me long enough. So we're going to do the Buffalo Trace. This is not the last time that we're going to probably be sitting in front of the cameras together doing a podcast.
Unlikely.
So I promise you next time, but this time I've got a special treat for you.
I'm going to hold you to it.
So we're going to do kind of one of my favorites, which is Old World Red. So this is a Amarone Massey. It's a 2017. It's chilled perfectly. So we're going to drink that.
I expect nothing but the best. So
while we go to the Q&A section. And so what's going to happen here is, Trav, you're going to go first.
Okay.
And you're going to ask 3 business questions.
Sure.
And then 3 personal questions.
Okay.
I do have the ability, like we talked about earlier, to veto one of those if I don't feel comfortable. But once you use your veto, you're done. It's over, right? So I have to answer. But I've gotten through these a couple other episodes of this, and I haven't had to use any vetoes. So,
All right.
and there's no carryover. So if you don't use it tonight, it's not like it carries over for the next podcast. So
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to let you pour that up. And so while you're doing that, I guess, my first question is thank you so much. Actually, before I ask my first question, why don't we, I'd love to cheers you.
we have to cheers.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And thank you for joining me. We spend quite a bit of time together.
Yeah.
Golfing buddies,
Salud.
family, friends. Yeah, salute. So fire away.
Oh, that's good. I've never had that before.
That is good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, probably should let that breathe a little bit, but
Wow. Camus might have a little...
It'll open up.
Camus might have a little competition. Okay, so question one, so it's challenging, just so you know, as asking these questions is like, I feel like I know a lot of the answers to some of these questions because
okay.
I've been so friendly. But like what I think people would be interested in is orthopedic surgery. How did you get to I feel like kids just don't grow up and say, growing up, did you know you wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon?
Yeah. So, I mean, anytime you go back to the childhood, you always have to ask the mother, right?
Yeah.
And my mom, to this day, swears that when I was like 10, 12, that I said I was going to grow up and I was going to be the doctor that helped fix people's knees and hips. I do not remember that, but you don't question your mom.
That's right.
And quite honestly, I can tell you that if I said that, I did not envision an orthopedic surgeon cutting people open, right? So my influence early on was the fact that I was always in athletics. I loved sports. And when I was getting older, I loved tinkering with things too. So as a kid, I was the guy that was always taking my radio or remote control car apart and building other things with it, or using my hands to tear something else apart, building something with that and creating things.
Sure.
And so I was always very, very naturally gifted with my hands. My brain always kind of worked that way, problem solving. I liked projects. I liked athletics. So when I went to college, I was like, I'm going to do sports med. And I'm just going to do pre-med as kind of a side because my plan was to go to chiropractic school and I was going to be an athletic trainer.
Yeah.
And, it just kind of evolved. We've talked about this so many
Sure.
times before, but to kind of keep it brief, and this will be a separate podcast in and of itself with the guy that actually helped me change my whole vision of what I wanted to do. But his name is Dr. Greg Coppola. He's another Erie guy here, and it was spring break. It was my junior year.
Okay.
And, kind of had my plan. I was going to chiropractic school in Chicago, had already accepted, was going out for my orientation. And my good buddy, Greg Beato, joined me on this trip. We took a detour to Michigan State. I met Dr. Greg Coppola, who was doing his sports medicine fellowship there. He's an osteopathic primary care physician, not a surgeon. And literally after that meeting with Dr. Coppola, we had a couple beers together, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a Dr. Coppola. So I came back, I took my MCATs, and that was like one of those first little forks in the road that I didn't see coming. And I literally pivoted at that moment. I went to my chiropractic kind of orientation, but I didn't go to chiropractic school, and ended up taking my MCATs, went to LECOM, and a couple more of those like little forks in the road occurred. The main one was literally because then I wanted to be a Dr. Coppola. I wanted to be a non-operative primary care physician that's focused on kind of using my hands from an osteopathic perspective. So manipulating and treating patients with my hands without cutting them open. And then I went and I observed orthopedic surgery. It was a hip replacement. It was the first surgery that I ever watched and witnessed. And quite honestly, when I saw that, I had done carpentry, I had done this, I had done that. It just made sense. I was using the same tools. And lo and behold, I said, hey, Dr. Coppola. I was very scared to kind of tell him because he was a mentor. He was a father figure. I felt like I would be letting him down. He was very, very encouraging to me. And I pivoted, made some switches. It wasn't easy because I had to go, and I was behind. I was behind the eight ball.
Oh, yeah.
I was late to the game. And orthopedics is extraordinarily competitive to get into, but I was fortunate enough to get a position in a residency in Metro Detroit.
Wow.
And accepted that, did that, and the rest is history.
That's wild. So you literally got accepted to chiropractic school. On the way to orientation, you make a pit stop in Michigan, meet this Greg Coppola guy, and the whole game changes.
Yes.
Why did you stop in Michigan?
So Greg Beato, my buddy, we were college roommates and we were athletic trainers together, and he was planning to go to osteopathic medical school. And he said, hey, I know this guy in Michigan State. He's doing his fellowship. I'd like to go check out their osteopathic school. Do you mind if we do a detour on the way to Chicago?
Yeah, it's
and
on the way.
It wasn't that far out of the way.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had a week. We had spring break, and
Yeah.
I'd never gone on a spring break trip. So I was like, we're going to a big college town. Like, that could be fun. So let's do it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to keep on the train moving here, because that could go in 100 different directions.
Yeah.
But okay. So my second question, my third question is going to be related to whole health. But before I get to that, because I feel like, that could be a longer topic. But my second question for you would be, in the last 5 years being around, I guess, just a little bit of a different world than I'm normally exposed to, I've noticed some buzzwords in your world that I think is kind of curious to me, specifically related to what you do with hips and knees. So I'll keep it hip focused for now.
Sure.
But this concept of direct anterior hip.
Yeah.
Like, it's this kind of this thing that at least for me, I have lately, it's like you are always hearing about direct anterior hip. So, in your fellowship and like in your, but like, what's what is it that makes that kind of the...
Yeah. So, I mean, I use a lot of analogies. So there's multiple ways to skin a cat. We've all heard that. And there's multiple ways to skin a hip. To kind of keep it brief and kind of, we got to remember, my mom's listening to this, so I can't get too technical with this. Your mom's maybe going to be listening to this. My boys may listen to this. But there's 3 ways to do a hip replacement. What I would call more traditional approaches, there's what's called a posterior approach, where the patient's lying on their side, and the incision is on their side into the buttocks area. It's kind of at an angle. There's also what's called a direct lateral approach, same kind of positioning, patients laying on their side, surgeon standing behind them, incision kind of on the side of the hip. Both of those approaches cut significant and very big, powerful muscles. The posterior approach cuts the biggest muscle, most powerful muscle in the body, the gluteus maximus muscle. It also detaches a group of very important muscles on the backside of the femur called the short external rotators. Both of those surgical approaches, and when you're cutting those muscles and detaching those tendons, creates inherent hip stability. It's a very easy approach to teach. It's a very easy approach to learn. It's the first approach that I ever learned, and most surgeons learn in their residency and training. So that's why most guys do it. On average, these percentages always change, but I'd say right now it's about 50%. Had you asked me 10 years ago, it was probably 80% of the surgeons did that approach.
Wow.
Second approach I learned was called the direct lateral. Again, laying on their side. It cuts the most amount of muscles. So it cuts the gluteus medius, it cuts the gluteus minimus, and those are what we call the rotator cuff muscles of the hip. So when you stand on one leg, your hip's going to go out to the side when those muscles have been cut or detached from the bone. And you got to remember, at the end of the case, we got to sew all these muscles back together, which is essentially like trying to sew 2 uncooked hamburger patties back together. It doesn't work well. You put the suture in, it cuts through the muscle. And then you're trying to attach the tendons back to the bone. You're having to drill holes in the bone to reattach it. Whereas there's a much better way of doing this, which is called the direct anterior hip replacement. Most patients that know me or come to our practice come a lot of times because of that. They hear that there's this guy that does this. And I was very, very fortunate to learn this early on because this was not taught in residencies back in the late 2000. I graduated in 2010, and it just was not something that was being taught.
Sure.
So I picked a fellowship where this was going to be offered because I knew it had a lot of potential advantages. It's very different. Patient lays on their back during the operation. The incision's up in the groin area. And the best part about it, we don't cut any muscles. We don't detach any tendons. And at the end of the case, all of the muscles go back almost like a spring-loaded mechanism to their original position. And the patient's recovery is significantly quicker. They have very little use of a walker or cane. Most patients with a traditional approach, maybe a couple weeks, 3-4 weeks with a walker and a cane. These patients, maybe 3 or 4 days on a walker, maybe 3 or 4 days on a cane. Some never use a walker, some never use a cane. The biggest advantage, though, is that the hip is inherently very stable, in addition to a quick recovery, because you haven't to touch those muscles or tendons. So it's easy to do the operation when you're doing the other ones because you cut so much that everything's kind of sloppy. Well, that's a bad thing after surgery because then the hip can be sloppy. And the highest dislocation rate is with a posterior approach. It's anywhere between 5 and 10% in the literature. That doesn't mean that high volume, really good posterior approach surgeons have a 10% dislocation rate.
Sure.
But that's the bell curve. That's the average. Okay. Whereas direct anterior hip replacements, knock on wood. Okay. I've done over 5,000 direct anterior hip replacements. I have yet to have one with a primary approach. Primary means first time hip replacement. With the current implants that I use and the current technique that I've used, 5,000 with 0 dislocation. So that doesn't mean it can't happen.
Yeah.
I've had revisions, which are big, redo, complicated cases, which have dislocated. That is a totally different animal, but 0 primary hip dislocations. And that really was the game changer when I first started practice in Detroit because no one, and I mean no one in Metro Detroit was doing it. I was the first person that kind of brought it there, which they always say you never want to be the first person. You definitely don't want to be the last person. I was a very, very early adopter, but I knew it worked.
Yeah.
I trained under Dr. Keith Barron at Joint Implant Surgeons in Columbus, Ohio, where I did over 200 as a fellow. And I knew it was something that was big, that was coming. So it wasn't experimental at all.
Sure.
And when I got to Detroit, I had a lot of, naysayers. I had people saying, this is a fad. This isn't going to last.
Not going to work.
Yeah. And, I was a trailblazer and it was challenging because I had a lot of people that were doubting me, that were kind of poo-pooing me and saying like, this is, and as we got more efficient with it, I mean, we started doing it quicker and quicker and these patients did phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it was a game changer.
So, and I don't want to go out of format here, but 2A to that question would be, and I've never asked you this, and I'm always curious, and just hearing you talk about it, is it ever contraindicated? Like, is there someone you wouldn't do a direct anterior hip on?
Yeah, so I would say 99% of the time I do a direct anterior. There's
Okay.
been a couple instances where I didn't. One would be if they have, previous hardware, right? Maybe they fractured their hip and they had a DHS, which
Okay.
is a plate and screw construct on the side of the hip.
Yeah.
And you would have to make an incision on the side of the hip to get that out.
Okay.
Not a lot of advantage to make a separate incision there and then come to the front. And then the other thing would be for very, very large patients that have a very large belly that hangs down over the front where the incision is going to be. Previously, that was more of a contraindication for me than it is now. As you probably are aware, 3 years ago, I changed the direction of my incision from a vertically oriented incision to a horizontal, or what we call a bikini style approach, which has significantly reduced the amount of wound complications and infections. So we made that change. And so I don't really remember the last time I didn't do a direct anterior because of the patient's size. It's usually because of some other extenuating circumstances like retained hardware that I have to take out. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to be making multiple incisions. And those patients are generally more debilitated too. So they're not going to see the functional advantage of doing this where I'm not cutting muscles because they're already using a walker.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So lastly, on the professional side of things would be, so I'd be remiss not to bring up whole health, right? So the concept of, you had gone, through all these changes, chiropractic school, I was an athletic trainer. I'm going to be a, internist who's going to focus on, this whole new, and now orthopedic surgery, practicing in Metro Detroit. Oh, you know what? Actually, here's what I'm going to do after I just, get brought in as a partner. I'm going to leave and I'm going to go back to Meadville where I grew up, and I want to get into that. But it's like you're there and then I break off and now whole health, right? So
Yeah.
this concept of whole health. And so before I think kind of the question is, what is whole health, right? It's like, I know it's more than just, your orthopedic practice, but this kind of mantra that I feel like you kind of have, built over, the last, your whole life, but especially like in your professional life over the last, 2 decades, right? And before you answer, I wanted to just put this out there because it's so funny how your vision works. Is Lindsay the other day, my wife, says to me, she's looking at a logo of something and she goes, "Wow." I go, "What?" She goes, "That looks like the whole health tree." And I'm like, it just like it clicked for me because all the things that you're talking about, like it's like that represents something now.
It does. And it always did, when I designed the tree. And
So what does it mean to you?
yeah, so whole health, just again, I'm going to try to be brief here so that we can keep moving. But
Sure.
whole health it was a lot more than an orthopedic practice. My best childhood friend, Jared Oakes, which is also, he's been a guest on this podcast. He and I, back in 2013, he's a very, very successful real estate attorney out of Cleveland, Ohio. We grew up together, went to high school together, went to college together. We were roommates together, best men in each other's weddings, both married girls from Detroit. And 2013, he's in a very successful law firm in Cleveland. I'm in Metro Detroit in a orthopedic practice. And we just had one of those like real moments where you're talking and we said, there's more to life than me putting metal and plastic into people and him doing real estate deals. And we came up with this concept of building a wellness community. And we looked at multiple properties, close to 60 properties in the Metro Detroit area. And we were thinking big, you know me, go big or go home. I mean, we were looking at 400 or 500 acre properties in Metro Detroit to create this wellness community, which had a medical facility, but it also had housing for families. It had a little downtown district where we had retail. Wow. We had maybe attorneys' offices there. We had, a cafe. It felt very European. There was a canal district right downtown, the Brownstone Apartments. We had a family garden. We had a preschool focus there, but it was education on wellness. We were the property that we actually decided upon was right next to a Metro Park in Metro Detroit.
Oh, okay.
And so we literally had a site plan drawn out. We were going to venture capitalists, angel investors, trying to look to raise funds to do this because our project budget was close to $300 million. Okay, I don't have anywhere near that kind of money sitting around to do this. So neither him nor I were going to be able to self-fund this. Yeah. But then we had Complete Care, which was the medical side of things that I was going to kind of be the director of. Yes, I was an orthopedic surgeon, was going to continue to practice as that, but it was more than just orthopedics. It was nutrition. It was there was a spiritual component to it. There was the mental, emotional component to it. So he, about a year and a half, we fast forward, we pitched this to several people. Sure. A year and a half into it, we invested a ton of time, a ton of money into it. He gets a new job offer with a new firm in Cleveland. I end up getting a job offer and moving to Pennsylvania after I just became a partner. That's a conversation for another day. And it kind of fizzled, right?
Sure.
But there was still this passion, this vision. And, I came to Meadville. I practiced for a couple of years in the practice that I started with. The fit wasn't right. And I decided that I needed to do this on my own. And I broke out and I literally started my practice from nothing. And it was just me. And I said, I asked Jared, Jared, are you okay if I use the name Whole Health? And it was originally Whole Health Joint Replacement Institute because that's all I did. I was starting to just do hip and knee replacements. And Dr. Phil Frendette came out of retirement and joined me. But it was this focus on much more than just, hey, your hips are arthritic, your knees are arthritic, let me put a new hip or knee in. It was, how do I get my patients well before that, right? So how do we change their habits? How do we, the way that I always kind of explain it is if I had this ball of clay, how could I create the most ideal patient to do a hip or knee replacement on, right? So it would have nutritional aspects, it would have spiritual or emotional aspects, it would have, if you're a smoker, we got to stop smoking aspects. If you are a diabetic, maybe we don't cure your diabetes, but how do we get your diabetes under control? How do we lose weight? All these things, instead of saying you're too heavy, lose weight, you smoke, stop smoking, you're diabetic, get that under control and come back and see me.
All right.
I wanted to be able to do that and help those people do that and then be able to do the surgery. So it's like, it's the full package. Whole health is a mantra. It's the full package of wellness. And it just happens that, we do surgery as well.
Nice. All right. Well, so, and I know that we're just eating up time here because that's what we tend to
We'll
do.
fly
a little
through the
bit.
personal stuff.
Yeah. So, okay. So I guess my first question for you is in terms of, so, I mean, how you got here as an orthopedic surgeon, right? But,
Yeah.
you know, you don't get here without the support of the people around you, right? And so, you know, someone who I've gotten to know over the years, very fortunately, your wife, who is a saint, by the way, just so that she knows that.
Definitely.
She's a saint. And so, like, you guys meet in Detroit. And so, like, at what point, so you guys meet, you go on your first date. At what point are you like, I'm going to marry this woman?
Yeah. So, you know, when I first moved to Detroit, I was so focused on what I was doing.
Sure.
And, you know, I had talked to a couple of my buddies, co-residents. One was an ear, nose, and throat resident. I was just like, listen, how am I going to meet somebody here? Because I am so laser focused on what I'm doing. I don't have all this extra time to go out and meet somebody. And I didn't have the desire to like just go out and go on 30 million dates. And so I did something that I never thought I would do. And I had to keep it from my parents, obviously, because it was kind of embarrassing to me at that time. I went online. My buddy Patrick encouraged me, goes, go online, you know, go on eHarmony. I'm like, that's what my parents would say. That's what people do. And then they leave their husbands or wives for this person and move to Pensacola, Florida. So, you know, my buddy Patrick and I went out, we had a couple drinks, and the next thing you know, I woke up with my laptop. No, that being said, I went on Match.com, and I literally went on 2 dates. Both of them happened to be Greek girls, and Karen was the second one, and we hit it off. And quite honestly, it takes a very, very special person to be able to be compatible with me, because I run such high octane and I put so much time and effort and energy into who I am professionally that I need somebody that can understand that and understand that that's like, if I can't have that and do that, I'm probably not going to be a good partner. Right now, granted, there needs to be that balance, but I'm not the guy that's just like a 9-to-5er. You know that. I mean, it's well past 5 o'clock right now.
7:50.
7:50.
I missed bedtime tonight, guys.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm doing stuff constantly with this, but that doesn't mean that I don't put a lot of time and effort and energy into not only Karen, but the boys.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I couldn't be where I am without her, because she is absolutely my number one cheerleader, my number one supporter. She's the voice of reason oftentimes when, you know, your head can start swirling and you go down a rabbit hole and think, you know, this or that. And she's the one that helps to kind of bring me back to reality.
Okay. So this is one that I've been thinking about a lot just over the years. And I think knowing you, I know your answer, but tell me your explanation after. But I'm going to give you 2 words, and I want you to pick the word and tell me why.
Okay.
Money, legacy.
What was the first part of that question?
So I'm going to say 2 words.
Yeah.
You pick the word that more resonates with you, and then tell me why.
Oh, okay. That's easy.
Yeah.
Legacy. Yeah.
Why?
I mean, that's everything that I'm doing, right? So at the end of the day,
Sure.
at the end of the day, and I hate to be morbid here, but like I always kind of go to like funerals, because at the legacy is like what you leave, right? When you're no longer here. So at the end of the day, what I would love for people to remember about me and to say about me, and for my boys to know without a shred of doubt in their heart and their souls that their dad did and it was to create a legacy.
Sure.
And to do that in such a way that like that guy, me, gave of himself to his patients more than they will ever know. The countless hours of sleep that I've lost, the amount of time behind the scenes doing the things that I've done, but doing it the right way. Because again, the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? And whether that's pre-op planning, whether that was my years of training, whether that's the way I go through surgery, like I do not leave a surgery until it is as good as it's going to get, right? You don't get paid more if you're in surgery longer. So like money, who cares? Because I've always, you and I have had this conversation many times. People that focus on money, and not to say that money's bad, right? Everybody enjoys money because it helps you to live a more comfortable life, and you can support the people that you love around you, and you can do really nice things with them, and you can help a lot of people out.
Absolutely.
Okay. But that being said, is when you focus on that as your goal, you're going to fall short 99.9% of the time. when you focus on doing things the right way for the right reasons and creating that legacy, so to speak, the results come, whether it is money or whether it's, some people have different aspirations. Like they want to be known internationally as the guru of hip and knee replacements. They want to be the guy on the podium. That was never one of my things. I'm a patient first guy, right? So when I preach, I'm preaching to my patients and I'm talking to my patients. This is for my patients, right? To get to better know me and what makes me tick. It's not for other orthopedic surgeons. If they want to watch, that's great. But like, I'm not giving lectures or dissertations on papers and studies that I've published here. That's not me.
I feel like Pippen right now with all these alley oops I'm giving him. So, and the last thing, so something that I know is near and dear to both of us, but the title dad, like, you know, so Luca, Santino, Anthony. So like, obviously you have all these different roles to people, right? You have, doctor, I'm Dr. Molly, I'm husband to Karen, I'm son to, you know, Gerald and Connie. So you have all these, you know, I'm big brother, I'm little brother, you know, have all these different roles. It's like, I know the one thing that you and I definitely through, you know, my journey with Lindsay, you know, and our son Maverick is like that resonation with like fatherhood. So I think the last thing is like, what has that been like with trying to build this practice? And I know that, you know, through your fellowship, like, it's just like, it wasn't like an easy journey. And like to get to this place now, like what is fatherhood and what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was a little probably late to the ball game by maybe my parents' standards in terms of having kids, because all my sisters had kids way before I did. I was in my early 30s when, you know, we had Anthony.
Kept a log on that, Gerald.
but it was the right time, right? Because I wasn't ready to be a dad when I was a resident, and we had Anthony when I was in my fellowship, and it was the right time.
Sure.
And you know, the first couple of years of your practice are way more challenging than probably any of your years of residency or fellowship, because you have no security blanket anymore, right? Like you're out there on your own. And fortunately, Anthony was young enough that I could dedicate the time and energy that I needed to then. And I still do, but now I make it a very big point to when I'm home, I'm home. Granted, this is an exception, right?
Right.
But you know me because you've helped me. I have coached every single one of the boys, and every single season, I'm coaching something, whether it's T-ball, we're past that, thank God. Flag football in the fall.
It's the
basketball.
Worst.
Basketball in the winter. I don't know if I should say, but I think I informally / formally committed to coaching a travel basketball team. Haven't talked to Karen yet, so anybody, please keep that on the down low. But yeah, so to me, that is the biggest like privilege and thing I want to be able to be proud of at the end of the day is like I was a really, really, really good husband and I was an amazing father, right? I was there for my boys. I taught them the value, just like my parents taught me, the value of hard work, the value of determination, grit, never say never. Yeah. And again, where there's a problem, there's a solution.
Yeah. Awesome.
So now we're going to turn the tables.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to ask you questions and we're going to start with the professional ones first.
Okay.
So
I'm going to have to get a little rip real quick here. Is that okay?
Fill it up.
You want some?
Yeah. Just top her off a little bit.
This is really great, by the way. So thank you.
So again, this is an Amarone 2017 from Massey. So
okay, go ahead. You start. I can multitask, man.
Yeah. So orthopedic solutions. Okay. Yep. So you kind of gave your history.
Sure.
You kind of briefly explained to people what you do, and most people, they think durable medical equipment. This guy sells braces. He sells walkers, canes, things like that. Like that is such a superficial view from my standpoint of what you do. And quite honestly, if you would ask me what you did 7 years ago, I would have given you that explanation. But you're a relationship guy.
Sure.
And you mentioned it to a service guy. So
exactly.
What does Orthopedic Solutions mean to you, and how would you explain what you do on a daily basis? Not only for us, but all of your clients.
Sure. So, I mean, from my perspective, we don't sell anything, right? We don't sell products. We sell service. And so, you know, I think our whole group, like the first thing is it's a team approach. Like it's not anything I do or Tony does specifically, or it's like, it's it's like we're a symphony and we're in unison. And the number one objective is to create a situation in which the patient gets the most efficient and effective service as possible. So, I mean, that means a number of things. The turnaround time, like, this whole concept of, this sense of urgency thing. That is, if we were a White House and Orthopedic Solutions, a pillar that held up the roof would be sense of urgency. Nothing waits till tomorrow. I mean, and even Tony, when, we talked about this in the beginning, I mean, this concept of on call. I mean, we're a bracing company, folks, and 24/7, 365, you're not going to find a time when there's a physician who's in our referral network who needs something who doesn't get it no matter when it is.
Is that a standard of care for DME companies where you have an on-call?
So it's a gray area, but I believe it should be, right? I mean, and most of that is translated to the certain contracts you hold with certain vendors. And so different facilities that we service in terms of like trauma call and things like that. But for me, it's like Orthopedic Solutions is, it's that. It's like your whole, like what you had said earlier is like, where there's a problem, there's a solution. It's like, we are the solution to everything. And I know that sounds kind of like braggadocious or maybe a little bravado, but it's like, there's nothing that we can't do. I mean, it's wild to think like some of the boots or some of the humeral splints, like the modifications that like the team make. It's crazy, like to see what comes out of these labs and things that were so like culture shock to me. Like not like in like a, oh my goodness, but I mean, some of the things that like I've seen Tony come up with, and it's like, oh, I would never have thought of that. But where there's a problem, there's a solution. It's a size 8 foot, but the circumference of their calf is 30 inches. It's like,
and that solution is Orthopedic Solutions.
you got it. It's just like there is no obstacle that we can't overcome.
Yeah.
And the other thing in terms of like the service side of things is like I just want to make sure that the the physician has a good experience. The less phone calls you get, the better, and quickly and effectively taking care of the patient in most efficient manner, but also like giving them like the time to make sure that if they don't wear this orthotic device for whatever ailment they're facing, if they don't wear it, it's definitely not going to help them. So if we don't do the best job we can to ensure the viability of the wearability of it, it doesn't matter. So it's not like we're not in the business of fitting. We're in the business of servicing patients to ensure that they get what they need and they're happy with what they get and they're going to use it.
So kind of going in line with that, like
Yep.
I know how many times you've kind of gone out of your way to take care of one of my patients personally, to keep it light. And you can veto this if you don't want to. We're obviously not mentioning any names, but like,
Sure.
Can you let's keep it fun. Can you give me one of the most uncomfortable situations you've ever had while working with Orthopedic Solutions?
Yeah.
And doesn't have to be one of my patients, but just
yeah, I mean, listen, for the kiddos at home, put your earmuffs on because
oh gosh, we try to keep it fairly PG.
we
here.
do. But listen, there may or may not have been a ball sack that was exposed. I
Oh,
think
jeez.
purposely. Okay, no. So it's fitting a patient.
Oh my goodness,
You
you're
asked.
going there.
You asked. Okay, so you asked, and here's what
I
happened.
did. I may veto my own question.
That is what it is. So
We
yeah.
call it a scrotum.
So you listen, scrotum, ball sack, whatever. It's like,
Oh gosh.
and this is, I mean, happened not to me
Where's the edit button?
several times, like over the years, but I have experienced it as well. And I can't tell sometimes if it's either purposeful or anesthesia or I don't know. I don't ask, obviously, but where a patient will have like a gown on and they're like needs their range of motion specifically like after an ACL or like after like an injury or, like a tibial plateau fracture, something like that. Right. And, you get this call and you're going to get him a CPM potentially for, that rehab after, and you're going to put him in this brace and just kind of like, why is that guy maybe showing me his scrotum? It's so awkward. And it's like, no, there's no way. And you kind of just pull the gown down and you like look back and it's like it's back up and you're like, no, that was definitely on purpose. And there really is nothing else to say because they're kind of awkwardly looking at you. And it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna have you sign here, and I hope
I don't think I'm ever going to ask that question again to any of my guests.
you asked what was the most awkward, and that's the most awkward. And I'm willing to bet if I called any one of our guys now and said, have you or have you not seen the male reproductive organ, one or the other, in a fitting at a hospital? They probably would all say yes. So,
Yeah, my head's spinning right now.
Sorry.
So along the lines of what you do, again, full service. I mean, you go above and beyond with all of your patients that you take care of.
Sure.
Like, what would you say? Can you give a story of like the most gratifying time that you've taken care of a patient, but it was beyond, again, fitting a brace or this or that, like where you felt that this patient truly appreciated it? Because again, you do so many things that are outside the scope of what myself or probably even most 99% of DME providers would even
sure.
put in their job description.
So I can't like bring up like one specifically, but like from like a generalization standpoint, like I can just tell you like, you know, there have been, you know, for me, the most important thing is like understanding a patient need, right? So there's like, you know, there's financial requirements to this, right? Like everyone thinks healthcare is free. Healthcare is not free. There's a cost, not just to the subscriber, but to the provider, right? And so, you know, unfortunately, not all things in this world are created equal. And, you know, there are people that are in positions that need help that, you know, unfortunately, sometimes don't always get those things that they need. And, you know, whether it's a person that, you know, has a diabetic ulcer who can't afford a deductible on a boot and doesn't get the boot and walks around on it until their, you know, foot has to be amputated. Whether it's, you know, a patient who is just bedridden after their, you know, fracture or, you know, meniscal or ACL repair and, you know, can no longer afford, you know, the other company who continually charges them a rental fee for their CPM machine, right? So like all of these various things where, you know, our commitment to, you know, within the scope of compliance too,
Sure.
but like I would say we go to the nth degree, no matter who you are, to make sure that you have the things you need to ensure a good outcome for you. Whether that means Tony and Orthopedic Solutions and I don't have the maximum benefit of whatever that outcome is.
I mean, I can personally say I've seen you multiple times take one for the team,
Oh, yeah. And
eat the
that's
cost of something where you lose
for sure.
financially.
For sure. But we win.
To-
you know?
You do, right? And that's the thing is like you do, because karma, right? You know it's going to come back.
Yeah.
And it's going to come back. I was just having this conversation with Anthony the other night.
Yeah.
He's like, what's karma? I said, there's good karma and there's bad karma,
Yeah.
right? If you spread the good, it's going to come back at you. If you spread the bad, it's going to come back at you too. So be careful. So that leads me to kind of the personal stuff. So I know how important your parents are to you,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Hungry Howie's been over to this house on, I can't tell you how many occasions to get us out of jams. But
Sure.
what, keep it brief here.
Sure.
What is the most important lesson that your mother
Mm-hmm.
and the most important lesson that your father taught you over?
So I'll start with my mom. Unconditional love. There's nothing that I can say without getting too emotional. Just because, you know, we've had, we've had a rough, month and a half where, my mom sustained an aneurysm and, she has been able to persevere because the love and, the support system she has around her. But that's that karma thing you talked about. Like that's good karma coming back to her.
Yeah.
Because she has been a pillar of unconditional love and support my whole life to everyone. I mean, the network is vast. I mean, it's unbelievable. But so from my mom's perspective, it's unconditional love and support. And, my dad, there are so many.
One less. One quality.
One quality.
I know it's hard with
It's
how
so
I-
hard with my dad. And my dad. He's like the best guy I know. The best quality about my dad. He always will have your back. It doesn't matter what I'm running into, a burning building, an angry mob of people screaming at me, that dude will have my back. No matter what.
I definitely know your dad better than your mom, and I can attest to that.
For sure.
I mean, that guy's been over here on like a moment's notice in the middle of the night to help with the
And
sewage ejection pump.
And that's the thing is like, if you're with me, he has your back.
Yeah.
So,
But I can see both of those qualities in you.
Yeah.
For what that means.
Thanks.
Like you definitely, your parents taught you well.
appreciate
I've
it.
seen the unconditional love, but I've also like you've had my back on multiple occasions, and true friend.
Hey,
Salud.
salute.
Okay.
Yep.
So next personal question. We'll try to keep it light here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Favorite, if you were on a desert island and you had to have one meal
Okay.
and one drink for the rest of your life,
Okay.
what would it be and why?
Oh, man.
You know, mine would be chicken wings.
I was just gonna say, is it weird that I know yours for mine? No. If it was like I'm on a desert island, my last meal or what?
No, you're eating that for the next 40 years. Every day.
Brisket.
Okay.
Love.
Yeah,
a
it's
good
not like
brisket.
brisket, macaroni,
No.
cornbread, collard greens. No, it's just one thing.
Brisket.
Okay.
Lean.
And you can
And
you
fatty
can put
protein.
like a sauce on it. What kind of sauce would you have?
My dad's homemade au jus. This dude smokes a brisket and makes sauce out of I don't even know what it is. It's unbelievable. And it's in a mason jar. And if you tuck that away, I would be totally fine. Yes.
And what are you going to wash it down with?
Bourbon.
Bourbon.
0 questions asked.
Yeah.
Bourbon.
You get no ice on this desert island.
Fine.
So
Bourbon.
you're just straight
And
up.
like if I had to pick a specific, like people are like, Pappy, I've had that. It's like if I'm really, really being honest, like if money didn't matter, I would just say, yeah, give me the best bourbon that I could have. But like for my like sipping, like day to day, like bourbon, I would be fine with Makers. I'd be fine with Buffalo Trace. I'd be fine with Elijah. I'd be fine with any bourbon.
So was that 3?
That was 3.
All right. So
Who's
now-
counting? You thought I was gonna veto the one with the guy and the thing when but I didn't.
Yeah, I kind of wish we
The guy with
can
the
we
thing with the-
edit that again but now we're gonna go into what we call the Sawbones 7th inning shoe stretch. all right?
Okay, yeah.
So
I've been waiting
I'm
for this.
super excited about this because this is the guy that created the problem with me and my shoe collection, which just continues to grow
As it should. As it should. That's the
as
whole.
it will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So please share with us what you're wearing tonight. Give us a little brief history
Yeah.
and
okay.
your take on it.
So, yeah. So, I mean, I guess to kind of piggyback of what you said. So, Ryan's obsession with shoes is, I think, ingrained in you and your natural.
Well, it's because of my obsession with an individual.
Exactly. So Michael Jordan, obviously, big fans. And I've been a sneakerhead literally my entire life. I mean, you can go back, ask my parents. I mean, as a kid, I'm talking old school and one Vince Carter's, like old school Jordans. I mean, pristine. I mean, we got 2 pairs a year, right? Your first day of school kicks and then your mid-year kicks. And I just absorbed this collection because I kept them clean. I always washed them after I wore them. Even the bottom of the soles, it was ridiculous. And so Dr. Molly asked me, he's like, hey, I want you to wear your favorite pair of shoes into, the podcast. And tell us a little bit about it. So my favorite pair are the Jordan 11 is the silhouette. And this specific colorway is the bread. So what's not to love?
What does bread mean?
So black, red, right? So essentially, Chicago Bulls colors, but bread is kind of the acronym associated with any Jordan silhouette that's black, white, and red. But for me, it's like growing up, it's the 11 is the silhouette of the Space Jam shoe, right? And so iconic photos. I mean, you've seen Michael Jordan with his goofy tongue jumping from you've seen him just doing crazy stuff and looking and going, that's it, with that high black sock. You've seen it. Everyone has seen it. And, as a kid, it's like, that was something that like you wanted to aspire, right? It was like, be like Mike. You've all heard.
Is there one thing about this particular shoe that you like the best?
So I love the fit, honestly. Like, I don't know what it is, but I know, everyone has their different feels and opinions, but like I'm kind of a mid-high guy. Like I love the Jordan 1 too, but like for me, the most iconic shoe for me is the 11 bread. And the other reason this shoe means so much to me is, I have a son, and the first pair of shoes, like when I found out we were having a boy, was Christmas time. I mean, you remember this, right? I mean, I got everyone in his family, all the boys, everyone got the 11s. They retroed. It was the first pair of shoes I bought Maverick, and I got them in baby sizes, which makes no sense, and about 4 other sizes that he could grow into. And it's just something that it's just like that, that Mufasa Simba thing. I don't know. It's like that father-son thing. And so they mean a lot to me, and it's just something that that I love. And like I said, it's a look, it's a feel. And
you got the feel, you got the look, man.
And
I'll tell you,
Jordan.
like, you
it's
definitely were the guy that got me. So I've always been a shoe guy too. I've always been a basketball guy. I just never was able to.
Sure.
Like growing up,
yeah.
I would get my kicks, but I never, and I mean never, had a pair of Jordans growing up.
Yeah.
Got my first pair when I was in, I think, med school or residency, because I couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
And when I met you and kind of saw your collection and then had the means to be able to do it, I started my kind of passion, and it's
kind of.
it's bad.
So can I just say though that he created a rule, which I think is hilarious because he's broken it already about 5 times. So the rule that he told me is that, hey, when I order a pair of shoes, I can't order another pair of shoes until that pair has shipped and arrived to my house. And
And last week, I think I had 3 pairs of shoes arrive on the same day.
It's so addicting.
So, well, I'm wearing the Jordan.
What do you got?
Jordan 1 Lows Concords, which is so funny because we did not talk about this ahead of time. I just told him to wear his favorite pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And this is actually a tribute to this.
Exactly.
So you can see the patent leather here, the patent leather here. So obviously Jordan 1s. I'm a low guy.
Yeah.
I'm not as much of a mid or high guy. It just isn't as comfortable for me. And the Jordan 1s are the most comfortable shoes I've ever owned.
Which is crazy because I felt like you were really out on that whole
Oh,
concept.
yeah. They just don't look comfortable,
Yeah.
right? But once I got into them, I was like, dang, those are really comfortable.
Yeah.
So, again, Jordan 1 Low Concords, the patent leather, which is what they brought from this, with the upper white. It just, I mean, I love the look. I love the shine of the patent leather. They did this nice blue here with kind of like the clear sole, but it has a blue tint to it. They've got the Air Jordan Wings logo on the back, the Jumpman on the front. And I mean, it's just like, I love the fact that it's like old and not new, because these are not new,
No.
but they're newer, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking the 11s and the 1s, 11 generations apart, but they kind of combine the two.
Yeah. I always feel like the thing that I like about, so like the sneaker culture in general is like, they're always kind of giving these little like Easter eggs or like little nods to the past. And it's always like, there's always some type of like, you incorporate something, whether it's like a sole or like an Air Max Air Bubble or like a Jordan patent leather, like a certain lace, a certain material, like a certain colorway of like a silhouette, right? Like it just is, I don't know. If I know this sounds crazy for people who are like, who cares? They're just shoes. Like there's so much that I feel like goes into it that just, that if it resonates with you and it is like something that you're passionate about, which, obviously are passionate guys and about a lot of things like professionally, but
Yeah.
that sort of passion trickles over into like
Style and fashion.
like other things too.
And it's like a part of who we are too.
sure.
right?
sure.
So it's like the
Yeah.
patients, they come in, they always know that I'm going to be wearing a pair of Jordans, and it's going to be different because it's going to depend upon my mood that day and what I'm trying to coordinate it with whatever else I'm wearing.
You will always catch me in a fresh pair of kicks. I promise.
So the next portion is another fun portion before we end it with kind of our closing questions wrap up. But we're going to do, and you don't even know about this,
Nope.
which is the beauty of this. It's called the Sawbones Challenge.
Okay.
You know me. I'm super competitive.
Arm wrestling?
I have to find something that I can win at.
Okay.
So what time is it?
It is 8:18.
Oh, perfect. We still have daylight. So we're going to go outside.
Oh, God.
We're going to go outside. We're going to hoop it up a little bit.
Figured.
And
I'm vertically challenged, for those of you who can't tell, by
if
me
you
having
want
to.
I'm going to give you the choice.
Okay.
All right. Previous episode, we did a 3-point contest, which I think that's probably going to be your number one choice because the other one's going to be a dunk contest. And we will adjust the hoop if you want to, but I'm going to leave it up to you if you want to.
Yeah, no. Obviously, I can't. Folks, let me explain this to you. I can't dunk, okay? So.
Even with these kicks on?
It's not how that
All right, so we're 3-pointing it.
Yes.
So we're going to catch you outside. 3-point challenge, Sawbones challenge.
Let's go.
And let's keep it real.
Hey. Let's go.
You ready? Sawbones Challenge 3-point competition.
First to score 5 wins. You ready?
Okay, so in closing, Trav, do you have any questions for me? I always like to kind of end it with, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, both personally and professionally?
Professionally, obviously I just want to keep growing, right? I mean, growing the business and looking at new opportunities and, different avenues for, growth for, not just, myself, but, just other, other things that it's kind of funny the way that your life and the journey that you're on will take you into places that you've never imagined in terms of opportunities, skill sets, just other things that are presented to you through something that you thought you would do forever, that it's like, wow, I never envisioned owning a DME company from selling brakes. So it's just, those sort of things. So just really embracing the journey and like really just enjoying the process. I know that sounds so hokey, but I'm having a lot of fun. I'm very fortunate to be around great people every day and great physicians and great referral sources and great partners and really just like team oriented people that are always, I'm looking after them, they're looking after me, and just trying to grow and, and just kind of move the needle a little bit, but more so than that, like really blow it up and really do something different. And so for me, that professionally is kind of my hope.
Well, I have no doubt that you will definitely blow it up because that's what you do. I mean, you're a big thinker, outside the box thinker.
Sure.
I love that about you because it's how I like to function and approach my days. And it's exciting. I mean, I can't wait to see like what you do.
Yeah.
I hope to be part of that, and I hope that we can, continue to collaborate together with that because, there's another saying that they always say. It's like, by yourself you can go fast, but together you can go far.
Yep.
Right. And that's the big thing to me is like being nimble, being quick. That's the beauty of having a private practice and kind of being your own boss.
Sure.
But you got to find like-minded people that are going to be able to do this and be along for that journey. So similar to you, like I love the process, right? It can be painful. It can be tedious at times, but I love the process of growth, thinking outside the box, we have so many projects that we've discussed that I'm really, really excited to eventually be able to kind of like bring to the world. But, let's keep people hanging a little bit
Let's keep them hanging.
on the edges of their seats.
right.
And hey, Trav,
Hey.
once again, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Thank you so much. That is Hey Sawbones, My Story, My Passion. Make sure to stay tuned in because we're going to give a trailer for next week, which is going to be super exciting with our next guest. But thanks again for tuning in. Again, this is really, really fun for me to do. I want to thank you again, Travis, for coming out to do this. It's very natural, very easy, being genuine, being authentic, and maybe we'll skip the scrotum conversations. But other than that, let's keep it real.
Or we won't.
Take care, guys. That's an outtake.
We should have had those drinks.
Yeah, where's the beverage cart? Can we get the cart girl over here? Hey everybody, welcome to Hey Sawbones, My Story, My Passion. Today's guest is an amazing, unbelievable individual. His name's Bill Spiros. He's an attorney at the McDonald Illig Law Firm here in Erie, Pennsylvania. He was in the U.S. Air Force for over a decade. Unbelievable attorney, unbelievable professional locally in Erie, unbelievable person. Love him, love his wife Amanda, his children. They're literally like family. Probably one of my favorite people to hang out with, go out to have dinner, drinks with. So stick around. You aren't going to want to miss this episode. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. There's a lot of banter that goes on between the two of us. And at the very end, as always, we have the Sawbones Challenge. You don't want to miss out on that. So stick around to the very end and get ready. This is going to be a fun one. Take care.
Well, I have loved some fishing in the outdoors where I'm free. It's where I spent my time before I hurt my hip and my knee. When that doctor asked me, son, how'd you get in this condition? I says, hey, Sawbones, I'm just carrying on an old family tradition. I wanna know, Doc, why do you think I got this pain in my joints from years of playing hard in this life that's too short? When that doctor asked me, son, how'd you get in this condition? I says, hey, Sawbones, I'm just carrying on an old family tradition. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me all about it, Doc.